Significant figures come about because in science, numbers tell you two things. One is a measurement, but two is how sure you are about that measurement, and that depends on what instrument you use to make the measurement. That certainty about the measurement you make, or the uncertainty, needs to be reflected in the number of digits you use to record a number. Every digit that tells you about more or less certainty is a significant figure. So we want to be able to do three things with significant figures. One is to just identify them in a number. The second is to add or subtract with them. And the third is to multiply and divide with them. So let's do these one at a time. First is identifying significant figures in a number. So we want to think of numbers as either being zeros or non-zeros. Non-zero numbers will always be significant. So for example, in 153 meters, there are three significant figures. All three of the non-zero numbers are significant. In 1.1 gram, there are two significant figures. They're both non-zero numbers. All non-zero numbers are significant. And in 293.99 liters, there are five significant figures, because each of the non-zero numbers is significant. Zeros can either be to the left of non-zero numbers, in between non-zero numbers, or to the right of non-zero numbers. If the zeros are to the left of non-zero numbers, then they're never significant. So for example, in this top number, only the 3 and the 2 are significant, so the whole number only has two significant figures. In the bottom number, only the 1 is significant, and the whole number only has one significant figure. Zeros in between non-zero numbers are always significant. So in the top number, the 1, 1, 5 are significant, and the two zeros, because they're in between the non-zero numbers, are also significant. So the whole number has 5 significant figures. In the middle number, all the non-zero numbers are significant, and the 0 is also significant because it's in between non-zero numbers. So the whole number has 6 significant figures. In the bottom number, the 2 and the 8 are significant, and the 0 is significant because it's in between non-zero numbers. So the whole number has 3 significant figures. If zeros are to the right of non-zero numbers, then they're going to be significant or not depending on whether the number has a decimal point. If the number does have a decimal point, then the zeros to the right of non-zero numbers are significant. If there is no decimal point, then the 0 to the right of non-zero numbers are not significant. So for example, if you have this top number, you have the 3 and the 6, which are non-zero, and so definitely significant. All of the other zeros are to the right of non-zero numbers. So then we'd ask ourselves, is there a decimal place? There's not, and so any zeros to the right of non-zero numbers are not going to be significant. So only the 3 and the 6 are significant, and this whole number has only 2 significant figures. In the second number, the 8, 2, and 5 are significant. The 0 to the left of the 8 is not significant, because zeros to the left of non-zero numbers are never significant. And then there's a 0 to the right of non-zero numbers, the 0 to the right of the 5. In order to know whether that's significant, we have to ask ourselves, is there a decimal place in the number? And there is. So the 0 to the right of the 5 is significant. So the 8, 2, 5, and 0 to the right of the 5 are all significant. The whole number has 4 significant figures. The third example, the 3 is non-zero, and so is significant. Then we have 2 zeros that are to the right of that. So we have to ask ourselves, is there a decimal place? There is, and so the zeros to the right of the non-zero number are going to be significant. The whole number has 3 significant figures. In the bottom example, the 6 and the 8 are non-zero and therefore significant. There's a 0 in between them. That 0 is significant because zeros in between non-zero numbers are always significant. And then there are a bunch of zeros to the right of the 8. In order to know whether those are significant or not, we have to ask, is there a decimal point? There's not, And so any zeros that are only to the right of non-zero numbers are not significant. So overall, that bottom example has 3 significant figures: the 6, the 0 in between the 6 and the 8, and the 8. So that's identifying significant figures in a number. We also want to be able to add and subtract with them. When you do that, you only want to pay attention to the numbers to the right of the decimal place, after the decimal place. So for example, if we had this math problem, 5.08 grams plus 25.1 grams, note if we only want to look to the right of the decimal place. Now, I recommend you just do the math for the problem first, and then we round based on the significant figures that we added. So for example, there are 2 significant figures after the decimal place in the first number. There's 1 significant figure after the decimal place in the second number. And so we want only 1 significant figure after the decimal place in the answer, the lower number of significant figures. So we rounded up to get just 1 significant figure. Try this example. First do the math, and then after you do the math, ask yourself how many significant figures are in each number after the decimal place. In the left number, there are 3 significant figures after the decimal place, the 5, 6, and 8. In the right number, there are 2 significant figures after the decimal place, the 2 and the 5. So we need 2 significant figures after the decimal place in the answer. So we're going to go to the second decimal place, the 1, and we're going to round that in order to stop there. So the number after that is an 8, so we're going to round up, and we'll get 10.32 as the answer. So lastly, we just need to learn how to multiply and divide with significant figures. And when you do that, you want to pay attention to all of the significant figures in each of the numbers that you're multiplying and dividing. So say you're multiplying 5 with 5. First, just do the math. You have 25. But then, you want to look at the number of significant figures in the 2 numbers you multiplied. Here we have 1 significant figure in each of the 5s. So the answer can't have more significant figures than the 2 things you multiplied. You can't be more sure of the answer than you were of the 2 things you multiplied. So, we need to round the answer in order to give us just 1 significant figure. So I'm going to round the 25 up to 30, and that gives me just 1 significant figure, the 3. The 0 is not significant because it's to the right of the non-zero number, and there's no decimal place. So try this one. First, just do the math. Then, you want to round the answer based on the number of significant figures in the 2 things we're dividing. So 34.56 has 4 significant figures. 1.25 has 3 significant figures. And so the answer shouldn't have more than the lower number of significant figures. It should only have 3 significant figures, like 1.25. So I'm going to go over, I want it to stop at where the 6 is, to 27.6. So I go to the next one, the 4, and I'm going to round that. Because it's a 4, I'm going to round down, and the answer would be 27.6.